Hello, friends. This is Ian Khan, and this is September 4, Friday, and here we are with another The Future in 60 Minutes live stream. I know a lot of you have requested and talked to me about doing something about blockchain. Everybody wants to know more about blockchain. Everybody is impacted by blockchain, and there's so much unknown about blockchain that we all need some answers. So we did it. Today I have one of the most incredible people going live with us on this live stream. It's my really good friend, Roman Beck, Dr. Roman Beck, professor at the IT University in Copenhagen, Denmark, and he's also the head of the European Blockchain Center in Copenhagen. And with that, I'm going to welcome Roman in just a few seconds. I'm getting the live stream started, and hopefully we've had a lot of registrations, and you can watch this live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn Live, Periscope, YouTube, Twitter. We are live everywhere. And without any further ado, I am going to do one quick checkup here, and then we're going to get Roman logged in. All right. Well, I hope you have everybody. I hope you have questions because blockchain is on everybody's to-do list, to know list. But today we're going to talk about the evolution of blockchain really briefly. We're going to talk about where blockchain is today, hype versus reality of blockchain, what is real in blockchain and what is hype. And we're also going to talk about the future of blockchain with respect to the accounting industry, transportation, food tracing, traceability, fraud, a lot of different things. A lot of the answers will depend on the questions you ask. So please ask questions during this live stream. This is an open session, and I look forward to connecting with all of you. So here we go. Let me bring Roman on board. Roman, welcome to the future. Be future ready in 60 minutes. You're on the live stream, and here we are collaborating again after we worked together on Blockchain City, the documentary, and we've done a few things since then as well. But welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ian, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we first of all, Roman, I hope you're safe. I hope your family's safe. I know you travel between Copenhagen and you're traveling in Germany, and so you're one of those people who are always traveling. And what impact has COVID had on you?
Well, clearly, I'm not sure if you can still hear me. I had a bit of a glitch here. COVID had a big impact on my normal travel. I'm usually kind of on a flight like 4 times a week throughout the last couple of years, and that came a bit to on hold. But now we are sort of back on track, and I'm commuting between Frankfurt and Copenhagen now weekly again. But yes, COVID is a game changer.
Excellent. We're going to talk about COVID. We'll talk about COVID and blockchain, but let's start with helping our viewers today understand where are we with respect to this big technology called blockchain. Help us understand your interaction with blockchain. How did you come across blockchain when you did? And what were the beginnings of when you started hearing this word blockchain, or even distributed ledger, because this term could be a term?
Yeah, good question, actually. Kind of, if you think about complex systems, and that is how I got started with blockchain many years ago in a PhD course, kind of where we were wondering kind of how do we manage and organize virtual teams, distributed networks in the world we're living in the internet. We came across Bitcoin in 2013 around, and we took it as an example for a globalized economy where we work together and uses a technology for payments such as Bitcoin that is nobody controlling. And that got us interested in the topic, how can you use that, and how is that from an information systems point of view, a technology that can be further developed. Then in that process in 2014, 2015, we looked into how that can be used in the logic behind Bitcoin can be used in other industries, and came across Ethereum. And thought about that this is something that definitely needs to be brought out of the payment and finance field, and needs to be introduced to supply chain to governments to other areas where kind of programmable logic that can be put on a blockchain is of relevance. So we started having some sessions with members of the core team of Ethereum, and then had a summer school in 2016. And from there onwards, we worked in close collaboration with industry, with governments on blockchain solutions and their application, as well as what needs to be done in order to develop blockchain and distributed ledger technologies further to make sure that they are actually mature in a way that they are ready for prime time.
Thank you, Roman. And there's so much information packed in there. Now, let me tell you a little bit of my interaction with blockchain and what I've been here over the past few years. We did a film, we did a documentary, we, interact with people at different levels. Here are some of the things that experts from industries talk about, and these are experts from the accounting industry, manufacturing, name it.
Right.
Experts out there who are professionals and their interaction with blockchain. First of all, what exactly is blockchain? And this question keeps on coming back. It keeps on coming back no matter how many times you try to do a good job at explaining it. The explanation still falls short because I believe we are explaining blockchain in the wrong way. Not you, you're doing an excellent job. I believe people like me, we need to figure out a way of making blockchain relatable, right? We need to figure out a way of how do we make it stick to these professionals that we're talking to blockchain about. And I think that revamp of messaging needs to place. And hence, I want to ask you some definitions of blockchain from an accounting perspective, from a healthcare perspective. What does it really mean? So we'll do that. Second thing is, we're unable to present, as of right now, the impact of blockchain on industries because we're at a very initial stage. We're not, this is not a technology that's been there for 20 years and it's matured and we know everything about it. Use cases for smart contracts are still evolving in logistics and all of those industries. And so help us understand where we are with implementation and the hype versus reality of blockchain. So let's do this. Let's do a definition. And I know you have an example that you presented in the documentary as well about the $20, but maybe
Right.
you have a new one. But help us understand in very layman's terms. Imagine we're your new students in your PhD course. What is blockchain and what should I do? Imagine I'm an accountant or I'm a doctor or I'm a retail store owner. Help us understand the really, really
Yeah.
basics of blockchain.
So if you think about kind of what we are most often suffering from in a supply chain, in a value network, in an environment we are working on, that is that we really can't be certain that we are looking at the same data. Kind of if you are ordering something and you have a master documents on the catalog information or so, you hope that the data you're having in your system is the same data your supplier has in his system, and most often that works, but not always. Kind of we have a lot of master data, for example, in banking industry that we're using that is outdated, it's not updated, it's fragmented, it's not maintained well enough, corrupted data or whatsoever. So everyone is kind of working on his or her own Excel sheet in updating address fields and everything, but data typically is not synchronized and updated. And we can't be certain that we're looking at the same page, that we're looking at the same data. So when we talk about blockchain is as a source of a single version of truth, which is one of the ways to define blockchain, then you can think of a system that guarantees that we are all looking at the same data. This is what is meant when we're talking about like a ledger we all share, a database we all share. We can be certain that we are all looking at the same data. This in itself, guaranteed by the consensus mechanism and the replication of the information across the whole network, is in itself quite a big achievement, because now we are eliminating a lot of uncertainty and frictions as we may act on in traditional systems on outdated data, old information.
So
That is the
let
ledger.
me pose a very layman question here. Were we not able to do that on Excel or Microsoft Access or Oracle through cloud, through having data centers? Were we not able to do all that before?
you were able to do that before, but you still had to trust that the information you have is accurate, is up to date, and that your counterparty you're doing trade with is actually having the same information. I think it was in 2010 when I had a company together with colleagues in New York, and the purpose was data consolidation for financial services industry. If you have my master data example, banks individually maintain financial instrument data, address from parties, know your customer, and this is a lot of work to keep it updated. Each bank is doing this individually because they have to make sure that the quality standards and the compliance they have to adhere to is actually met. Now, this is costly, and every bank is doing this individually. So wouldn't it be great to have one system that is guaranteeing industry-wide, in this case in the financial services industry, to have a system in place that is guaranteeing that we are all looking at the same data and that the data is up to date? That is one of the promises of this database we all share, what a ledger is able to do and brings to the table.
Yeah. And so can we say that blockchain is a different type of a database? Is that can we say that?
Blockchain is, of course, a database, but it's not just a federated database or distributed database, but it's a database that is not, if it's designed like that, controlled by a single entity, which means not a single big player in the market or somebody who is trying to cheat can manipulate data, and therefore everyone can trust the data in the system. Now, what you can trust is that a transaction took place and that the data in the system is the data we are all looking at. We are still having to deal with the so-called Oracle problem, that the data that is entering the blockchain needs to be correct, but that is a different question.
Okay. So let's do this. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that with blockchain, the entire idea of storing information, saving information, having information is changing, not at every level, but at a very specific level, because we're trying to industry or people who are working on blockchain or Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever it is are trying to create a new platform for information exchange, for information storage. Would that be right? That this is a big step from our traditional computing, which started 30 years ago with the invention of the internet, and we've come up to the stage until now. But now we need an entirely different level of information management. Would that be correct?
Of course, it has something to do and is building upon where the internet started, but not completely delivered. You may remember the book "The World is Flat," Thomas Friedman, and we all thought now the internet is the big equalizer, putting everyone on the same playing field, and we can compete and grow and do business on a global scale wherever you are, and we can actually prosper. What was not possible at that time is that we can enforce interests, business logic, contracts, cross-border, cross-country, cross-jurisdictional spheres. And that is, of course, still difficult from a legal point of view. But from a logical point of view, enforcing business logic is now something that the second part of the blockchain is promising, namely the part where the smart contracts come into existence, into the picture. So we have a transaction database that is kind of the same for all of us, but we can also agree on a certain way of how we wanted to do business together, how we wanted to exchange values, how we wanted to organize payments and settlements. And that is executed by smart contracts on the ledger, which is something the internet, as we know it, was not able to deliver. And that's the reason why we are working with all kinds of workarounds to make international business on internet functioning. But technologically, that is something that is most likely going to be solved by some distributed ledger technology that is combined with the internet as we know it.
Of course. And as folks read more about blockchain or try and understand it, they'll come across things such as the double spend problem, that, hey, on the internet, you were unable to, digitally spend some form of currency, but then not have it as well. And, how does double spend get impacted? So there's a lot of interesting things that we can start reading. The Byzantine generals problem. a bunch of those things. Talking about actual impact, as you as professionals today start looking at the impact of blockchain, there's a divide, and the divide is that do I need to learn everything about blockchain as a professional? How will it impact my job, my role, my industry? And we can talk about a few different use cases, maybe, or some industries that you've seen blockchain having a lot of different impact. Now, since we connected last, it's been a while. It's been about a few months or a year now. Have you come across some new studies, or have you been doing some new studies at the European Blockchain Center that can help us understand something of an update on the technology? What have you seen in the last year or two?
Let me start with the use of kind of increasingly of blockchain in the governmental sector, in administration, and in for countries. Kind of the European Commission Joint Research Center kind of asked us last year to do a study and working on a solution how you can actually enforce the Paris Agreement, where we are trying to reduce CO2 emission from combustion engines, from vehicles, to look into if it is possible to use a DLT solution that is tracking and tracing CO2 emissions of all vehicles on European roads, and subsequently, if you will, kind of having a negotiation and trading system on that system that is automatically negotiating permission rights. So if you think about that, if you have a system around that has roughly 300 million vehicles, cars, trucks on European roads, and you want to make sure that across the different member states of the European Union, every state is actually enforcing that CO2 is metered, kind of coming out of the cars, as well as that the permission rights that are needed in the future to operate a combustion engine actually the market price and the auctioning mechanism behind is enforced across all member states. You want to make sure that the member states, for example, stay in control of the data, that they can enforce it, and that they are knowing kind of what cars are registered, how the national system work in order to kind of submit a fine and so on, while at the same time you want to make sure that the system is operating in the same way across Europe. That is a system that is a very realistic project that is now rolled out, ended up in the EU directive that combustion engines from 2025 onwards, cars have to have an onboard unit that is actually writing CO2 emissions in a DLT system so that we can meter the output. So what we are seeing is increasingly that governments on an international level, governments are looking into the use, not just in the EU, in the European Union, but also at the OECD level, and at UNECE is looking into how to operate systems across borders.
And we've seen in the past that some governments definitely have taken an aggressive stance on blockchain. We've seen the story of the UAE government in Dubai, who has a very aggressive strategy for blockchain implementation. I know Singapore, Estonia, Denmark, everybody's doing something with blockchain. But the question becomes, what is real and how practical is it? And is it really going to be something mainstream that governments are going to invest in? Because then it impacts every other sector that operates within those regions and those countries. We also have a few questions coming in, and I'm going to go to questions in 2 seconds. But help us understand, Roman, is it very realistic for us to realize now that blockchain is it's not a hype. It's not just about cryptocurrencies, but it's beyond that at an infrastructure level. Is that right?
That is the reason why I'm trying not to use cryptocurrency examples, because people are so fixated on kind of the volatility of crypto. Is it legal? What's the inner value of crypto? But honestly, that is only a small percentage of all the application possibilities of a blockchain solution. If you look at different initiatives, and you mentioned a couple of countries in the world, then they are sometimes only a use case or some application, or at a pilot level at best. But if you look at the Chinese government having rolled out the blockchain service network, that is something like the operating system for any economic activities in China, then you can see that it's not just a couple of smaller countries doing some pilots, but
Yeah.
large countries going all in developing a blockchain backbone, a blockchain infrastructure on which base you are going to do all kind of economic activities, which is something similar we are doing at the European Blockchain Partnership, where I'm sitting representing Denmark, working on the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, EPSI, that is allowing us to do business across Europe in the single European market, but in the future, digitally enforced, digitally supported as a digital single European market. So
Yep.
you see there is a lot ongoing that is going beyond individual applications in some smaller countries, but there's a huge movement and momentum. And if you ask me about where are we standing, the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure version 1 is already operating. The
Yeah.
Chinese Blockchain Service Network is already operating. They started last year, EPSI started this year, and we will see more and more features, more and more use cases that will be go online. And right now we are working on version 2. For the citizens, for the end consumer, it may not be as visible, but that is the same with kind of internet services. I'm not sure when you last time touched TCP/IP or have been in direct contact, with any kind of protocols of the internet, but we are using it on a daily basis, and we will see something similar coming around in the different rollouts of blockchain, or to be more precise, DLT systems and their usage.
Absolutely, absolutely, very well said, and that's what I clearly believe in as well, is that as governments, as these infrastructural changes take place within governments, large institutions, banks, financial institutions, customers and end consumers are not seeing that change apparent at the front, but there is change happening at the back end, and
Yes.
slowly things will get replaced, systems will get replaced with newer things, whether it's distributed ledger technology or blockchain or not. But there's this constant evolution where I think we're moving towards a different, more efficient world, and everybody at a business level, at an enterprise level, would like to have more security, would like to be able to offer more comfort and peace of mind to their consumers, to the people they serve, to the banks, to the customers. And so this is a need driven permeation of technology. This is a need that's making this possible. If there was no need for what blockchain provides, then nobody would be implementing it, right? So that's kind of, we need to understand that we need more trust, more accountability, and that's why this is creating a shift. Let's talk about some of the industries. Some of my friends who, let's take a question first of all. My friend Hassan Bitar from DCC Catering in the UAE has asked a question uh, pertaining to the current times. Here we are. Is blockchain taking over now at this point with this pandemic at the moment, or what is the impact? So really, is blockchain making any impact to the pandemic? Can it make a positive impact to the pandemic? What can it do? Can we trace
Yeah.
something with blockchain in the pandemic?
There are a couple of initiatives around, and actually kind of projects that are rolled out to track and trace people and their test results, and giving them the freedom and privacy they need, while as a societal level, kind of how many people are affected, have been tested positive, and so on. But I must say, the current crisis and hype around COVID, in combination with looking for application fields for blockchain, is not the main interest point for what we are doing, because now what we are seeing is you are throwing a technology on a very acute crisis situation, which is of course good and everything, but the long term many years effect of blockchain will most likely not be because it helped to kind of deal with the COVID situation. But I see that there is a lot of hype around, trying to illustrate now how blockchain can help with the COVID situation. But honestly, in my perspective, if we look back in 10 years and ask ourselves, what has been the strongest driver or the turning point for making it visible and clear to everyone that blockchain is a reality, then it's not the use of blockchain on COVID, but most likely the Libra shock, when suddenly societies governments realized serious big companies come together in issuing something like private currency, which was really kind of the point where blockchain was dragged out of this shady environment of some startups, some mediocre use cases. If big companies are betting on that, then it has to be something that is serious. So my bet would be in a couple of years, it would not that we say COVID was the game changer to illustrate how blockchain is useful and can be applied, but it would be Libra, whatever Libra is going to become.
Yep. And that's literally the impact of the large companies such as Facebook,
Right.
Google, Microsoft, and what impact are they having on our lives? That's an entire different session in live stream because there's so much happening there. Let's talk about the credit union industry, the financial industry, the industries where, whether at a retail level or at a commercial level, what impact do you think will or is blockchain having on cross-border transactions?
Well, we see all kinds of decentralized exchanges and ways of settling transactions already in use. Again, even though you don't want to talk about Libra, kind of if we look into retail and wholesale central bank digital currency projects, most of them are not based on a ledger, but
Yeah,
some are. And the reason why we are talking about central bank digital currency is because of the momentum blockchain, cryptos, stablecoins, and Libra have created in order to kind of, and has created a lot of pressure on
yeah,
institutions, on commercial banks as well as on central banks.
yeah.
And in that light, a lot of projects that may not be related to a crypto representation of a fiat currency are rolled out right now.
So and Roman, you can talk about Libra if you like. It's there's no you
It's not
can.
my favorite topic.
Please, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. So does that mean that larger companies like Facebook, through their cryptocurrencies such as Libra and whatever, do you think this will become very standard for us to use cryptocurrencies rather than fiat currencies like a dollar or something else? Where do you see that evolving in the next 10 years or more or less?
Yeah, if you what we tend to forget when we talk about Libra is that actually there was something else that was very important and is important when we wanted to use Libra, and this is a wallet. And and that was kind of, I think Facebook calls it Calibra. So your wallet is going to be something like the browser, the access point for all your transactions and activities on any DLT system. So you could even say that actually companies like Facebook may not be even interested in a cryptocurrency, but they must be interested in providing wallets, because that is going to be the gateway for users, and you want to be close to the user, to the consumer. Those who are controlling the wallets, the browsers, the gateways to blockchain solutions, they control access to the customers.
Mm,
That
very
is
interesting.
going to be important. That your crypto wallet will become the wallet where you manage all your identity, your identifiers, your credentials, and essentially kind of staying in control of your data. That's going to be very important.
Mm, very interesting. So, if we talk about how do we get there to this world of tomorrow with wallets, with cryptocurrencies, with blockchain, smart contracts, and all of these things, let's talk about two professions that I feel uh, are heavily kind of in a role of being the guardians of information in the future, and they are accountants and law firms. I see a huge role that accounting firms and lawyers of the future can provide on governing smart contracts, these automated contracts that will do what we are going to talk about in the next few minutes. Let's talk about that. First of all, what is a smart contract?
Well, a smart contract is a piece of code. It's something where we are agreeing on a certain kind of event, and if that event occurs, something is processed and it's going to be changing that event into a new outcome. It's very similar to normal software you were thinking of, kind of with an if then else programming. Now, what we are having now, however, is that this is something that is executing if that event occurs without our interference. So if we are agreeing, kind of, if the weather goes up, if the heat temperature goes up, my cooling system is cranking up, then it's going to happen. This is a simple case. But let's assume you're on an airplane, you're flying, or you're planning to fly, but the flight is canceled. You are entitled in most countries, definitely you are in Europe, to get reimbursed if the flight is heavily delayed or canceled altogether. Now, what you have to do is as a customer, you have to do this yourself, manually filing, doing the paperwork so that you get reimbursed. This would be a measurable event that is on record. Flight control, they all know that. So you could actually automatically get reimbursed without any kind of extra work, because smart contracts that would meter and ongoingly see what's going on in the aviation industry would see that flight was canceled. You were a passenger, you get your money back. Clearly, kind of, for airlines, unfavorable, because they can't control the delay or when they are going to pay you back. But that is an example for an event takes place, smart contracts, some call it self-executable code, is taking care of that problem, and without your interference with your doing, you get your money, you get your right, because it's your right as a passenger. That is one example, and is illustrating how smart contracts can work.
I remember our mutual friend Marloes Palm, who's also head of blockchain for the Dutch government. In the documentary Blockchain City, she talks about a smart contract being executed when the light bulb goes off in your neighborhood on the street. The street lamp it doesn't work anymore. And in a smart contract world, that triggers a smart contract to a vendor saying that, hey, this bulb is not working anymore, and that contract executes and goes to that person, to that company. The company sends their technician over. Technician comes and fixes that bulb, and then it can automate an auto payment based on that contract that was executed and fulfilled. So automation. Similarly, in logistics, I believe.
I would disagree. No, it's not automation, it's autonomous systems. And that is the big game changer, kind of autonomously, because there are some sensors. The light bulb maybe is sending the information, I'm at the end of my lifetime. Somebody needs to come and replace me. It's autonomously done. It's not automated. It's systems acting, and it looks like they are doing this because they have some sort of consciousness. But it's going to be autonomous and not automatic. That's one of the big differences. We have automatic systems already, but typically they are reactive. Something takes place once we have started it. Amazon is shipping a book once I have ordered the book automatically. In the future, in machine-to-machine IoT transactions, machines will autonomously interact. This is one of the game changers. Yeah. Most people may not completely understand, because they think that these are still automatic systems, but it is a different animal.
Let's talk about maybe the evolution of smart cities as an example. So cities that are super connected, hyper connected, your infrastructure, your cars, your homes, everything has smart devices in them. And I think that's where you're alluding to, right? To the automation where different things can talk to each other. Is that correct? Help us understand.
Yes. So typically when we are talking about, the big picture, we are coming from a already digitized world, if you will, but that digitized world is still, as I mentioned, kind of reactive and automatic. The combination of different technologies, where blockchain is one piece, sensors, algorithms, AI, as well as blockchain, will create autonomous systems. And at that interplay, we will see new things. The famous fridge, that is autonomously ordering milk before you even realize that milk is running out. And the fridge has authority to do so. The fridge has a wallet. The fridge has money. And the supermarket chain where the fridge is going to order can be certain that this fridge has money, is my property, and that this order is not a fake order or something went wrong. It's legally binding. So the combination of artificial intelligence, sensors, and blockchain to enforce decisions in an autonomous way in an inter-organizational setting, that is going to be very interesting when we are moving into this sustainable autonomous systems world. And we see first glimpses already when we talk about autonomous traffic vehicles. In the near future, they need to communicate with each other. Who is going next over the crossing? Then we need a system that is not provided by one car manufacturer, because we wouldn't trust them. We want to have a system that is kind of transparent, enforcing rules, street rules, and is something that is embedding national legislation.
Yes.
And is organizing traffic on our streets. And that is most likely a DLT-based system.
Yeah. Do you see that happening? When do you see that happening at a city level, and where do you see that happening first in the world?
I think we are seeing this in small pieces already when it comes to supply chains, where you have extremely valuable pieces where you wanted to track and trace if that is refrigerated all the time, or if this is truly the expensive good you're ordering. So that we see where risks are high, and a lot of is at stake. We see first implementations, but we are of course also seeing systems or we see companies who have patents already on these solutions. And if you are tracking patents and patent filing and which companies are filing those patents, you can forecast to a certain extent the direction in which we will see also in the near future solutions in areas such as grocery stores, supply chains, shipping and container logistics, where these systems will materialize first.
Yeah. So you mentioned, thank you, Roman. You mentioned refrigeration, and I want to put a comment in there. Before that, well, I want to thank everybody who's watching the live stream. Time is passing really fast. We can answer your questions. Well, Roman will answer your questions if you put them in the chat on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn Live, wherever you are. Put your questions in there, and we'll try our best to answer those. But thank you so much for tuning in and making this live stream possible. And thank you, Roman, for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Sure.
I want to mention this on refrigerated containers. So, would this be the right example? So, let's say a drug manufacturer has COVID vaccine. Let's talk about the COVID vaccine. Next year, we're going to have COVID vaccines, or in the future. And drug manufacturers now want to send this COVID vaccine from point A to point B, which takes 10 days on a ship, maybe. Rough example. And the temperature of this container needs to be maintained at a certain level, say minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius, whichever country you live in. Now, as the shipment progresses, there's a breakdown in the systems that are running these refrigerated containers. And for a minute or so, the temperature goes above minus 10. It goes to a level where the vaccine is under threat now. It goes to plus 5 degrees Celsius. But what is happening now in a traditional system is that the shipment is delivered and nobody knows what has happened to it. And when these vaccines are administered, maybe they're not effective because they've been jinxed during their shipment, right? That could be a case of the usual world, the world that we live in. Am I okay until now, Roman? Right?
That's perfectly fine. I would have used a different example, but that is a perfectly fine one.
Now, in the world of blockchain, if we were to track the temperature of these containers through blockchain, so we have a system now that nobody can hack into. It's constantly updated. It's on a distributed ledger, so nobody can fake things or delete things or delete data. And when this shipment arrives at the end point, or even during the shipment, it arrives at the end point, through tracking through the database, the end customer is able to see, hey, the temperature has dropped here, and I know because my blockchain powered analytics system is telling me it has happened, so we cannot accept this shipment, so on and so forth. Is that an example of trust in the logistics chain? And
that is an example. That is an example. That's a perfectly valid one. But of course, kind of if you go into the details, a lot of questions need to be answered in order to implement it in the right way. Is it a permission blockchain or is it a permissionless one? If it's a permissioned one, let's say the supply chain industry, the logistics industry, or the cargo shipping companies would operate that system, you would have to look into, who is actually holding nodes and who is deciding on the validation of the transactions to make sure that the data is really not compromised. And secondly, when it ever comes to examples where information has to come out from the outside world into the chain, off-chain events, such as the temperature is dropping or is rising, then the question emerged, how reliable is the information that, for example, indicates the temperature in this refrigerated container? It could be that the container was standing in the bright sunlight all the time, but the sensor was somewhere in a fridge. So this is typically a problem kind of where the data is originating from, and that part can't be solved by the blockchain or any DLT system, but needs to be answered by smart devices and hardened devices that can provide the reliable data that is then processed in a reliable environment. And the reason why I'm emphasizing so much on that one is until recently, it was a bit like, even if I provide reliable data, I'm handing it over into data management systems that aren't reliable. So it's a chicken and egg problem. If the data is correct, but the data is afterwards manipulated or not updated in a system, so what's the value of good data? And if you have a fantastic system, the system is only as good as the data that goes into. Now, it seems that we may have solved the data management part, which is adding pressure on now where the data is coming from. And in that light, we see a lot of projects, initiatives to improve digital fingerprints, that the identifier is hardwired or on the product, not just on the package, to make sure that we actually can directly illustrate it is that product and not another product that has been tracked and traced. And it is that refrigerated container and not another container that may have seen a power outage.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roman. That really helps. And I think some companies, there's some nice use cases in logistics and transportation, which go to food tracing, it go to the food chain. So I know there's a few evolving out there. I want to ask about audit in accounting and audit. The accounting profession is going to see a lot of changes because of blockchain. Because now blockchain is able to audit data, so it's audited already. There's also the assurance side of information that banks provide data to accounting firms, and they perform assurance services on it. And if banks implement blockchain at the egg door, they don't need to assure that anymore. So that impacts accounting firms to a huge extent. What is happening in the world of this managing information and figuring out what has happened to it from an accounting perspective? What impact do you see, if at all, in the accounting profession?
If you look at the big four, obviously they're all very interested, the big auditing and accounting companies. They're very interested in what's going on because indeed, maybe even more so than in the financial services industry, DLT systems are going to potentially disrupt the accounting and auditing industry. If you only come around once a year to certify that the data that has been stored and managed on a DLT-based system is accurate. But you can also think of a kind of how this is changing the profession altogether. It's not that now you are approving that the data at rest that is sitting in your books, but you can spend and have to spend more time on the data where it is originating from and doing your detective work, if you will, as you are supposed to do it. If we think about the recent Wirecard scandal, the auditing company said, we did not expect that level of criminal activities in that company, so you can't blame us.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm having an auditing company, of course you expect that the auditing company is doing some detective work and not just checking the books. So in other words, if we are going to see more DLT solutions used for accounting and auditing, there is still enough work for auditing companies to check the surrounding and make sure that the data that is fed into the DLT system is correct.
Yep. Yep. And one of the misconceptions about blockchain is that everything on the block on a blockchain, just generalize it, is accurate. It's correct, and that's such a big contradiction. It is not correct. It is what data you feed it and what information you store
Right.
on blockchain, right?
A DLT system confirms that the transaction took place. That's all. You
Yeah.
know,
It doesn't
that
care
happened.
what's in that transaction, but it is
Right.
just confirming that this event has happened.
Yeah.
Excellent. What about the legal industry? Do you see impact of smart contracts on the legal industry in terms of, do you think law firms will have to add an element, and accounting firms will have to add an element of being smart contract lawyers? Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. I mean, this debate is as old as maybe blockchain itself. We talk about coding lawyers, IT lawyers that actually have the knowledge and understanding the affordances, the abilities of the technology to relate it to what kind of legal norm might be affected or apply here, and vice versa. If you are a regulator, if you are actually writing those norms, you need to understand how these autonomous systems, these smart contracts, actually can be made in a way that they are conform to a jurisdiction, or if that is not possible, how the jurisdiction needs to change, right? And that is, of course, something that requires knowledgeable lawyers. But I must say, kind of, I'm seeing increasingly a lot of activities around the world where really smart lawyers really understand what they are talking about. So I'm not too pessimistic about that part.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial industry, we touched upon credit unions, we talked about logistics, accounting. We touched a little bit on cryptocurrencies because we're okay to talk about it, but it's just an endless discussion about where they're headed and
Right.
what's happening. Help us understand a little bit on, and I know time is almost over. We've got just a few minutes with you. Tell us about your work at the European Blockchain Center. I know you are doing a lot of education. There's PhDs in blockchain. You do a lot of work. Help us understand what are
Yeah.
you focusing on from an education perspective, so that we
Right.
can understand where that field is going.
Good question, and obviously it's something that is occupying a lot of my daytime. Kind of what we are trying to do is educating students so that they make evidence-based decisions. And when I'm talking about students, I mean master students, but also executive students in our executive programs, and also doing workshops for industry, in order to make sure that we are not just generating new insights and developing not just insights in how to apply blockchain, but also know how to develop blockchain to solve some of those problems we touched upon. We haven't even talked about quantum secure blockchains. That is another area where people are concerned about, and where solutions are at the horizon.
Yeah.
And we are transmitting that information. So kind of generating and distributing knowledge is a core function of what we're doing at the Blockchain Center. We also are involved in regulation and standardization, looking into how to form systems. I mentioned already that I'm sitting at the European Blockchain Partnership in the technical working group, and we are working on the rollout of a European blockchain services infrastructure, but also working on standardization at ISO, where jointly with great colleagues from all over the world, we are writing right now a governance standard for blockchain and DLT systems, all the way to work at OECD to develop regulatory frameworks, also to, for example, have an understanding of what needs to be done from a national legislation point of view to handle stable coins, crypto euros, crypto dollars, crypto yuan from a national point of view, or how interoperability across border and across chain can be organized from a technical and legal point of view. That is work I'm doing at UNECE. So full range education, research, standardization, and if you will, regulation, where we do work in Europe and beyond.
Yeah, excellent. And so it just makes perfect sense to say that education about blockchain is, or should be, in my opinion, a big some, at least some part of everybody's education, whether it's starting off at a high school level or progressing up to your graduate
Yeah.
degrees, to your master's degrees, and further on. Leaders, executives, decision makers, individual contributors, I believe today should learn whatever they can about blockchain. And even if 90% of it you can't understand, but that 10% information that you retain, you're going to be able to build upon that. What is the best way to pursue this, Roman, for people who are not
Yeah.
technical? Because blockchain tends to get very technical. What are some
Right.
of the resources you can point us to?
So first of all, we just started the new semester on blockchain economics, a course I'm teaching. And what I'm sometimes saying is kind of, if you in 10, 20 years have to explain to your children what you studied and you say, I studied the internet, they may laugh, we don't have a program on internet economics or how the internet works,
Yeah.
because it's so omnipresent and it's so everywhere that it would be hilarious to have a course on the internet. But that is the situation we are on right now. We have courses on blockchain, and in a few years we will laugh about that, because people say it can't get any bigger. But
Yeah.
that is the situation. So we do courses on blockchain economics, and it's a combination of the technological foundations. So you need to have a bit more understanding on how it really works,
Yeah.
but also you need to understand how this is changing and affecting existing business models, is creating new economic models, and how you can make a revenue stream out of providing public goods, not just private goods, which is something most companies have a bit of a hard time to understand, because they're used to produce a product that you can package and ship. And that is the business model. If you can't produce something yourself, and if you don't completely own it, and if you can't really ship it, then it's really difficult to think of a system that can generate a little revenue stream that is beneficial for you. But that is exactly what blockchain is going to promise, along the examples we talked about in the shipping industry, in the accounting industry, in the automotive industry, in the financial services industry, in the public sector, with a lot of applications where value is generated for the society, and finally is helping us to have more sustainable IT systems than we have today.
I want to conclude in the next couple of minutes, Roman. I want to ask you a kind of a final question. Is blockchain real and should be taken very seriously and pursued, or has it been a hype? Is it just something that'll come and go? Where do you want us to? What side are you pointing to? I know your answer, but I want you to help us understand
And kind of, I would have to check, kind of, in the old days we had in Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah,
I would have to check what hype actually is, because if hype means, we have since 10 years a system like Bitcoin running, and we have since more than 5 years something like programmable DLT systems around which are used, then it's a damn long on lasting hype.
yeah,
But on a more serious note, I think kind of we are seeing a lot of developments. And as a colleague in China once kind of used a wonderful example, it's like water lilies. They are growing for a long time under the surface, and a lot of activities are ongoing. But from above the pond, you don't see that.
yeah,
The moment they break through the water and blossom everywhere, you will see how substantial the development and root system must be underwater. We see a lot of activities under the radar. For those who think they can start joining the club and jumping on the blockchain train when they see first lighthouse applications, it is most likely too late, because others have made their homework, have developed the systems, have the patents, and then it's going to be a bit difficult to catch up.
yeah. Absolutely. And I am thinking on very similar terms that this is the best time to start learning about it. It's not about investing in blockchain or buying crypto or doing something else. But first step is get serious about blockchain and understand everything you can about it to understand what you should do next. And it's not hype anymore. It used to be hype maybe 10 years ago for a couple of years, but it's very serious business. It's literally the new foundation of this shared economy, shared businesses, along with, and we didn't talk about AI, we didn't talk about quantum computing, which you alluded to a little bit. And if you want, Roman, give us your final comments, and if you want to add an AI and quantum in there, tell us a little bit about this world of tomorrow that we're looking at 2, 5, 10 years from now. What is your vision of that world?
First of all, there's no better time to start learning than now, and that is not just the truth for blockchain. It's for all kinds of things that are going to happen and being around us. But indeed, I was talking a few times about autonomous systems, which is something when you talk about, you need a blockchain strategy either as a company or as a country. Yes, you could have a strategy for each and every technology, AI strategy, blockchain strategy, or you could look at beyond. What does that mean? Combine those technologies, the systems they are creating. And as I mentioned before, these are autonomous systems which we are seeing in the shopping industry, the fridge, if you will, grocery stores, but also in public transport,
Yep.
in autonomous vessels, robo ships cruising over the ocean with no single sailor, no soul on board. We have drone delivery that is going to happen. It's hard to put a time frame on it, but I think some of those activities we will see in the next 2 to 5 years, certainly. But I'm also thinking that something like stable coins and the use of different currencies through a wallet seamlessly on your mobile phone is coming much earlier.
Excellent. Roman, thank you so much for being here today. 1 hour is not a lot for us to understand everything about blockchain, but definitely it helps us, pushes us into the right direction and helps us understand where we should be going. We'll do many of these live streams in the future, maybe for specific industries, and we have this Future Ready in 60 Minutes series that's happening right now. But I do want to thank you from all of us here at Future, from our visitors on web, from people who asked questions, did the Q&A. And thank you so much for your time, effort, and all the incredible work that you do at the European Blockchain Center. And you're pushing us as a society, a global society, in figuring out the framework, in figuring out the steps we should take towards the future. With that, I want to say goodbye to all our attendees today. Roman, you hang in there. I'm going to connect with you in 2 seconds.
Sure. And
Thank you
thank you
so
for
much.
having me. Great
For,
pleasure.
you're very welcome, and thank you, everybody. This is the end of the session. Until next time, this is Ian Khan. Take care and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.